It's Jack from Cultaholic.com, back again with yet more wrestling news. Some very exciting, some very unexpected pieces of news as well in today's video. Tom, of course, has already done a news video earlier on today with an entirely different range of news items in it, so check that out if you haven't seen it already. But for now, let's take a look at those lovely headlines. First of all, Miro, formerly known of course as WWE's Rusev, has said that he refuses to work with a certain major AEW star. Next up, Sasha Banks has appeared in the trailer for the second season of The Mandalorian. And finally, more details have emerged of a strange finish to a match, a potentially botched finish to a match on this week's Raw. So yes, first of all, Miro, or Rusev, Miro, who recently appeared for the first time in AEW, has revealed that he refuses to work with a certain other major AEW star. However, we're not quite certain how serious he's being, so let's take a look at all of the evidence. So yes, Miro was asked by a fan about potentially working with Pac, formerly known of course as Neville in WWE, where they've wrestled each other before, and Miro said quite weirdly that he refuses to work with Pac. Pac of course hasn't been seen in AEW for quite some time, essentially because of travel restrictions. But yeah, when asked about Pac, Miro said, "Pac already tore my bicep, I'm not working with him anymore, I'm done with him, I'm not working with Pac anymore." And he seemed to say it quite seriously, but then again we have to remember that Miro also said that he was done with wrestling in what seemed like a very serious fashion, and then rocked up in AEW. Back in their WWE days, Miro and Pac, or Rusev and Neville, had a match on Main Event in, I believe, 2015, in which Rusev tore his bicep and was out of action for quite some time. That seems to be the incident that he's referring to on an episode of Main Event. But again, we don't know how serious this is because he continued to wrestle Neville after that, like for another year or so. So I don't know, maybe you could say that it's because in WWE you just wrestle who you're told to wrestle and there's less leeway, there's less creative control than there is in AEW. But then again, we worked out here at Cultaholic that both Neville and Rusev, Pac and Miro, appeared together on an episode of Up Up Down Down playing FIFA against each other, and that was referenced in that video where Rusev, they were laughing and joking, they seemed like they got on absolutely fine, aside from the very vicious FIFA rivalry that was taking place before our eyes. And in that old video, that incident is brought up where basically Rusev says, "Oh, you tore my bicep," and they kind of just laugh it off, and it seems to maybe be one of those weird little wrestler in-jokes between the pair. Now, of course, we won't know how serious Miro or Rusev is being until Pac is back in AEW regularly. Then we'll see if they cross paths at all. Maybe they'll wrestle together quite soon and then, that issue will just be put to bed. Maybe they won't wrestle together for a while and maybe things will grow and everyone will think, oh, maybe he was being serious. I don't know, it's one of those cases where he delivered it so deadpan, saying, "I'm never working with Pac again," but then there seems to be prior evidence to the contrary. And of course we know that Miro loves to work us a bit, doesn't he? He loves to wind us up, lead us down wrong paths. Maybe that fan who asked him the question stumbled upon a genuine future plan, a genuine feud plan between the two, and he just tried to deflect away from that. Maybe there's no plan and he just decided to mess with us, or maybe it's totally legitimate. I don't know yet, but I'm sure we'll find out in due course. Next up, Sasha Banks has appeared in the trailer for Season 2 of The Mandalorian. This was rumoured. It was rumoured that she had a place on the cast of the second season of The Mandalorian back in February, but then nothing really came of it. But now it has been confirmed. She's there. She's in the trailer. She seems to be very much part of this upcoming season. It's one of those weird things where the mainstream audience, the Disney audience, or the Star Wars audience, I guess, who don't know anything about WWE or wrestling, she must have just been a character that appeared and that was it. But no, wrestling Twitter went crazy over this news. Sasha herself referenced it on Twitter, and yeah, she's part of the Mandalorian cast. Now obviously it's not known yet how major a role she will play, but she seemed in the trailer to be a bit of a shadowy figure. She was wearing a cloak like what the Jedi wear, and I don't know, it's quite intriguing, isn't it? There was even a bit of back and forth over the summer between Sasha and another member of the Mandalorian cast, Gina Carano, former MMA superstar Gina Carano, kind of a bit of a pioneer even before Ronda Rousey's time. That's because Carano put out a post on social media saying that she really wanted to go to a WWE show, and Sasha replied saying, "When you do, I'll kick your ass." And maybe it could have been a bit of cross-promotional, pre-planned beef between the two to then hype this new season of The Mandalorian. I don't know, but then again, there has been recently a bit of a backlash towards Gina Carano by members of the trans community who took something she said. She had in her bio of her Twitter, basically a lot of people took it as her mocking trans people and the trans community. She's denied this. It's gone a bit back and forth. It seems to be very much an ongoing situation. So I don't know if will we see Gina Carano? I mean, I'm guessing it's all been shot. I don't quite know. But what I do know is that Sasha Banks is in the trailer. She's going to be in the second season of The Mandalorian, and that's very exciting. Of course, whenever a wrestling star makes that leap to Hollywood, or in this case, the small screen, it's a big deal, especially when it's a huge franchise like Star Wars. You can't really deny the impact that could have for Sasha Banks and her career. We know that she loves wrestling in general. We know that she went over to Japan to wrestle there in her downtime, or to train there, in her downtime. Obviously, she's been with WWE for many, many years now, but I don't know how likely she is to step away from wrestling into more of an acting career, or whether this is just like a one-off sort of thing. But it's going to be very interesting to see what her role is, and if The Mandalorian utilizes Sasha's wrestling ability in some sort of action sequences. Next up, we recently speculated over that weird finish to the match between Asuka and Mickie James on this week's Raw. A lot of people were saying that maybe Mickie had suffered an injury because of the strange way the match finished. The ref decided to wave it off early while Mickie was caught in the Asuka lock, trying to roll out of it or roll into a pinning predicament to force Asuka to break the lock. And then the referee just went, "No, she's given up, that's it, that's the match." And everybody was very confused. Well, according to PW Insider, there's more to it. Apparently, they've unearthed some details about what actually happened. The planned finish was for Mickie James to tap out to the Asuka lock, but the bell was rung prematurely when James and Asuka were grappling, with James selling Asuka, trying to lock her in a submission hold. And she was, if you've seen it, she's rolling backwards, trying to plant her feet on the canvas and trying to basically force Asuka to break the hold. Now, apparently PW Insider has been told by numerous sources that the decision was made to ring the bell out of concern that Mickie James might have actually been out on her feet due to the way that she was selling the move. But apparently, she was totally fine, and she just did such a brilliant job of selling that the referee was fooled and decided to call the match there and then. Now, PW Insider admit that they've heard different versions of specifically who called for the finish, whether it was the referee or somebody else. But the decision was made that the match be stopped out of concern for Mickie James, who was actually fine. And apparently the post-bout promo featuring Zelina Vega was to set up for Asuka versus Vega at a future event, possibly Clash of the Champions, but that is not 100%, or Clash of Champions, this isn't WCW, is it now? But apparently that is not set in stone yet. Next up, on the Busted Open podcast, Mike Bennett has been talking, former WWE Superstar Mike Bennett, known then of course as Mike Kanellis, has revealed what it's like basically to have a personal one-on-one conversation with Vince McMahon. He said, "I had many good conversations with Vince. After we had our first child, himself and Maria Kanellis, I remember going into Vince's office and I was like, look, if this isn't working out, if I'm not what you thought I was or whatever, or you just don't see anything in me, then just let me go for a couple of years and maybe I'll come back and we'll figure this out." He then said that Vince replied, "I've seen your work, I think you're good, we just have to find the right storyline that fits. We just have to find the right place for you. I've got a million guys right now." And then Bennett says, "The one thing I respect about Vince is that he was always brutally honest with me." He goes on to clarify this, saying that he never sugarcoated anything, which I respected. "I wish other people in the company wouldn't sugarcoat things for me or just try to do things, but Vince, if I went to him directly, always straight up told me what was going on." He then goes on to say that when himself and Maria would pitch stuff to Vince, he always seemed open to it and was very respectful about everything, and their ideas just didn't materialize. And Bennett goes on to say, "I'll tell Vince one thing, he might like it, but then Roman goes in there, or Seth goes in there, or Bray goes in there right after me, and he probably doesn't even remember what I've said after that, which does suck." He finishes by saying, "It sucks for us smaller guys who are trying to get their names up there, but at the end of the day, it's just how that company works. I tried, Maria tried, it didn't work, so what else are you going to do?" That seems a very balanced viewpoint from Mike Bennett, whereas Maria has been a little bit more, in a slightly veiled way, but seems to have been a bit more critical of WWE on social media since their release. And finally, and apparently he's okay now, but apparently a WWE Hall of Famer revealed that he indeed did test positive for COVID-19 a couple of months ago, and it's none other than Booker T. On his Hall of Fame podcast, Booker revealed this, saying, "The CDC told me that yes, I have tested positive for COVID-19 back at the end of June. I never got my result back, but they called me today to tell me that back at the end of June when I got tested, I tested positive. Not great that he didn't get his test back, but at least he knows now. He goes on to say, I've had 3 tests since then, and they all came back negative, but it just goes to show how backed up we really are with this system that we're working with as far as people finding out if they've got this or if they don't have it. I am living proof. He goes on to say, thank God I'm still here and that I've got a healthy immune system, and God spared me on this one, and I could have been one of the nearly 200,000 that didn't know I had this, and I was gone on my way to the next life. And thank God I was smart enough to quarantine from the family. I stayed away from everyone. I stayed there for a couple of weeks until I started feeling better, until everything started subsiding, even my taste. I waited until that started to come back a little bit before I started meeting up with the family. Now, obviously, that's very scary news for Booker T. It seems as though he identified some of the symptoms, such as losing his sense of taste, at the time, but wasn't certain whether he actually had COVID-19 or not until the release of this podcast episode. So hopefully he's okay. He seems to be fine now. He says that he's all back to normal, and hopefully everybody currently, working in wrestling, and everybody just around the world in general, is doing their best to prevent, further unnecessary spread of COVID-19. And generally, that brings us to the end of the video. Stay safe out there as always, and stay positive. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Excuse me. Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments section down below. And of course, I'll see you very soon.